A very good morning to all Lagosians and a very good morning to Nigerians. I am Oimpriye Krumale. It's 9:01 in the morning and it's time for On Record. On record, as you all know, we discuss the actions, the inactions of government, ministries, departments, and agencies, as well as business and health affairs that shape our worldview. The program also encapsulates personalities and institutions that make decisions that affect the lives of people one way or the other. And then we also avail you, our listeners, the opportunity of calling into the program and ask questions from our guests on the topic of discourse. If you have been following On Record closely for a while, you will have noticed that most of the episodes so far was directed towards 2023 elections, but most importantly, youth's participation in elections. But today's focus is not just about youth's participation in the forthcoming 2023 elections, but possible disenfranchisement and how to avoid it. For political systems to be representative, all parts of society must be included. When young people are disenfranchised or disengaged from political processes, a significant portion of the population has little or no voice or influence in decisions that affect group members' lives. A key consequence is the undermining of political systems' representatives. To make a difference in the long term, it is essential that young people are engaged in formal political processes and have a say in formulating today's and tomorrow's politics. Inclusive political participation is not only a fundamental political and democratic right, but also a crucial thing to building stable and peaceful societies and developing policies that respond to specific needs of the younger generation. For young people to be adequately represented in political institutions, processes, and decision makings, and in particular in elections, they must know their rights and to be given the necessary knowledge and capacity to participate in a meaningful way at all levels. When there are obstacles to participating in formal, institutionalized political processes, young people can rapidly feel disempowered. Many tend to believe that their voices are not going to be heard or that they will not be taken seriously when and if they are heard. The problem becomes circular as politicians may lose interest in responding to the aspirations of young people if they cannot win their votes. This in turn leads to young people being increasingly excluded from taking part in decision making or in debates about key socio-economic and political issues, despite their sensitivity to the demand for social equity and justice, environmental protection, and cultural diversity. In Nigerian democracies, the inclusion of young people in formal political processes is important from the start to the end. So, as a young person, what are those things that might hinder you from participating in the forthcoming elections, which is just a few days from today? My guest today is a legal practitioner and a policy expert. He is Timi Olagunju. Good morning and welcome to On Record.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
You're very much welcome. Mr. Timi, 2023 election is at the corner and INEC has briefed Nigerians and told us that since the history of Nigerian elections, for 2023, the number of youths that registered for their PVCs is a milestone. It has never been recorded before, and it's obvious that they will be constituting the majority when we talk about stakeholders and those who are playing on the field, most especially voting, casting their vote in 2023 elections. Did you see this coming?
Well, we didn't see this coming in the last election, that this particular anticipated elections will be this way. However, one of the key things that might have increased that surge is the quality of the candidates.
The quality of the candidates.
Yes. And in terms of quality, it is not just about experience politically. No, it's about two things. Those who resonate with a certain demography of people and also speaks their language, shows that kind of comradeship, that they empathize with their situation. And so that is a key. And then also is the fact that, integrity is the correspondence of words with action.
Okay.
So someone that to a large extent they see that has a trajectory of integrity in that sense, and they feel is a different breed from the crop of politicians that we have. And that's where a lot of the other politicians might have gotten it wrong, in the sense that they keep selling experience to the people. But that experience they are selling is the experience of the old order. And that is where the challenge is.
Irrespective whether it's of the new or the old order, it's very, very relevant in any vocation.
Oh, yes, it is. But it doesn't resonate with the people, because the people want to do away with the baggage of the old. The baggage of the old has done so much damage to Nigeria and has brought us this far. And so if the baggage of the old has brought us this far and people want to break away from the products or results of the old, do you think they will consider the experience of the old relevant in that sense? And so that's where the challenge is. The challenge is that people did not see candidates that kind of, young people generate, that resonated with someone that though has experience of the old but does not bank on it, but largely shows that he wants to drive them towards the future.
Okay. Now, when we look at the young people, from your perspective, I have asked this question before and I'm going to ask it again. From your perspective, when you look at the young people, what do you think is their ideal for a president? What do you think is their ideal for an executive at the subnational level? What do you think is their ideal of a leader that will represent them in the National Assembly? What model do you think they have in their mind?
Well, I'm a young person. I may not be a youth in the definition of a youth, but I'm a young person. And my own perspective, right, of the kind of a leadership that I would want is a leadership that shows that it is teachable, that shows that it is ready to be inclusive in the sense of being able to bring the ideas, commingle the ideas of the old and the young in order to make Nigeria progressive. The current statistics that we have, the average age of political office holders in Nigeria is 65 years. That's the average age. Is that not shocking to you? In a country where the population, 75% of the population and more, are young people. In other words, there is a disparity between the demography of the population and the representation of that demography in decision making at the political level. And so, a leadership that shows that it wants to make efforts to be inclusive, to incorporate that for young people, for women as well as for persons with disability. Because we are all a big part of the society, right? And so that is it. A Nigerian leadership that shows that it has a trajectory of integrity. Like I said earlier, integrity is the correspondence of words with action.
Okay. Mr. Timmy, let's take a break here. Let's quickly go on a break, and when we return, we'll go into our conversation deeply that we've started.
Welcome to On Record.
Every word matters.
What
I want to do is to take Nigeria from consumption to production.
My name is Mr. Innocent Chugoma. I started by trading on motorcycle spare parts.
They really ask, how much is the Nigerian life worth?
Policing is everybody's business, not the business of the men on uniform alone.
We will establish student loan 4 years course. Must be 4 years course.
When you dispense, a pharmacist dispenses a drug to a patient, the name of the drug must be written on the envelope.
On Record is a 45 minutes program where we discuss the actions, inactions of government, ministries, departments, and agencies, as well as business and health affairs that shape our worldview.
Join us 9 a.m. every weekday on your urban lifestyle station, High Impact 102.1 FM. On Record.
Every word matters.
Put a touch of class and finesse on your brand by advertising with us at High Impact 1021 FM. For more information,
call 0706 393 5694, 0915 958 1881, or 0902 745 3931.
Follow us on our social media platforms at High Impact 1021 FM. Our deals are hotter than the weather itself.
Our deals are hotter than the weather itself.
On Record.
Every word matters.
Welcome back, and many thanks for joining us on the program. I'm still having a conversation with legal practitioner and a policy expert, Timi Olagunju, and we are talking about youth participation in 2023 elections and the possibility of being disenfranchised and how we can avoid that. You can send WhatsApp messages on 0907-224-5018. Of course, you can equally ask questions or call into the program by dialing 0700-1021-1021. We are live on YouTube at High Impact 102.1 FM. We're also live on Twitter at High Impact 1021 FM. Yes, Mr. Timi, we are still talking about the youth. So what can possibly hinder you from voting in this 2023? I listened to you on another platform, and in one of your interviews, you said one of the ways to get youth to participate in elections, most especially the 2023 elections, is premised on the atmosphere and direction of policy, environment, and projection. What do you mean by that?
Well, so basically, the policy environment is, public policy is not just the actions of government, but it's the action and inaction of government and agencies of government. And one of the key frameworks in that, or agency that drives that, is INEC. Okay. Right? So INEC's capacity to drive certain things will be key and instrumental in driving the success of the elections, as well as the capacity for people to be able to exercise their rights and not get technically disenfranchised. And so that for me is a key framework, INEC. And INEC is doing a lot already, very commendable. We hope that the result or outcome matches the effort that is being put in place. Because I am aware that, there was a time, I don't know if it was on the program or some, that I talked about the fact that they had a communication lapse. INEC is doing a lot, but there's a communication lapse. And that they should apply the approach that was applied during the Ebola crisis, during the corona pandemic, where the National Center for Disease Control worked with social media platforms, worked with all media houses, as well as all key stakeholders in driving the information about the situation. And as you know, there are a lot of youth, there's a youth bulge in registration and even in terms of anticipated voting. One of such platforms is TikTok. You have a lot of Gen Zs there, yes, right? And recently, interestingly, 2 days ago, I heard that there's a partnership between them and INEC to provide information directly from INEC to the platform's portal where Nigerians can access, and that will to a large extent curb disinformation and misinformation. So I think that is the kind of progress. They need to step it a bit further and extend that kind of partnership to other platforms, because those are the key things. Misinformation, disinformation are key elements that, and they are driven by the policy environment. That is the agencies such as INEC. They're also driven by policies such as what is happening with the cashless policy and the tie to stem the outflow of cash in the political process. You understand? So these are key things. Someone rightly said that politics, not culture, determines the success of every nation. But politics can change a culture and deliver it from itself. And one of the key tenets of politics is policies, because policies are driven through the political machinery.
Okay. In same vein, same conversation you had, you made mention of the importance that youth should not only register or to go get their PVCs, but that they do so bearing in mind the location where they will cast their votes. Now that's very, very important. It's very, very key, because at the moment as we speak, people are raising voices, legislators, lawmakers are raising voices that the federal government should shut down schools within the period of elections so as to allow students to go cast their votes. Do you equally share that perspective?
Yes, in three perspectives. First perspective, except that I do not share the perspective that schools should be shut down. I share the perspective that
like suspended
academic activities should be suspended.
Okay.
And people should be allowed to exercise their freedom of movement. Right? Because it could be a different thing.
Freedom
you can
of
have
movement.
Yes. Which means their capacity to be able to leave the school or perhaps stay in the school. Right? It's different from a situation where students are mandated to stay in school or mandated to leave. The challenge is this: when you mandate students, when there is academic activities going on, right? Some lecturer who perhaps is tilted towards, a certain political divide that seems to think that it will not be favorable can fix a test for Thursday or Friday to the election. Right?
Okay.
And that's where the challenge is. And at the same time, you see, because of that, it may be difficult to travel. As a parent, you might not want your kid to travel the day before election. That's a Friday for an election on a Saturday. But you may be comfortable that your child travels on a Thursday, right? Or Wednesday before election. Just common sense. And so I am saying that academic activities should be suspended at least a week or days before election to allow students to be able to exercise their fundamental human rights to vote. Because we took a survey, although it's not readily available, but we took a survey on our own and we discovered that close to 69% of the students are actually registered at home to vote.
Okay.
The remaining are in school. So that's why I said I registered to vote around their school environment.
Okay.
And so that's why I said, in order not to disenfranchise them, right, suspend academic activities, but not necessarily drive them out
of the campuses.
And so when you suspend academic activities, those who want to leave can readily leave school, and which is over 70% of that population, right? That reduces the number or burden on the school. Because one, when you have a beehive of students in school, during an election that there's high level of insecurity, it puts a burden on the vice chancellors, the school administration, right? And whatever happens to the students in that sense becomes a burden on the school management. They can reduce significantly that burden by, allowing students the capacity to leave. Second point is also the fact that, students gather in clusters. And with the trend of the elections as it stands, look at what's happening in Unizik with the insecurity there, right? With the trend of the elections as we have it at the moment, right? Students, these clusters can be used post-elections for agitation because of maybe seemingly election results that they think may not be favorable to a certain candidate. Okay. And so to avoid the burden of these things, it's best to suspend academic activities, let students have free movement to be able to, ingress and outgress towards exercising their fundamental human rights.
Okay, let me bring in, let me quote ASU. The Academic Staff Union of Universities on Tuesday said it was not in the purview of the National Universities Commission and other tertiary institutions, regulatory agencies, to shut down schools to allow students in universities and polytechnics and colleges of education to vote during the forthcoming elections. A member of the National Executive Council of ASU, chairperson of the union at the Federal University of Technology, MENA, Professor Gbolahan Bolarin, said this in an interview with the Punch newspaper. He was reacting to calls from individuals and groups, including the House of Representatives, that the nation's higher institutions should be shut down during elections so that the register near their homes and return to vote. Now, if they didn't shut down these institutions, and the percentage of students that registered to vote, because during that time the schools were on a nationwide strike, and some of the excuse that is being given why schools should not be shut down is because students have already been at home for the past 8 months or 9 months thereabouts. So why should we want to shut down schools for just an election that is going to take place within a short period of time? Is that tenable?
Well, that's why I said it's not about shutting it down. It's about suspending academic.
Okay, I think probably they're using it in a synonymous way.
For the sake of national, for the sake of national activity.
Okay.
Considering the peculiarity of our environment as Nigeria, right? Because look, is it not better to give people the ability to go home? Now, when you suspend school activities, what that does for the school authorities is that it lifts the burden off them, right? And students that want to go home can just go home, right? And they are now in the coffers of their parents. But students that want to then stay in school can decide to want to stay in school, but it's no more a burden within the university's purview. But when universities or polytechnics or monotechnics insist that students must continue academic activities into the election, they risk putting the students' burden on themselves, right?
Okay.
In case there is something that happens in the institution of learning, because you have failed to suspend academic activities and give people the capacity to exercise movements, that burden is now on the universities and can taint the image of the university going forward.
Okay.
So we are not saying that we should we are saying that let's reduce the burden of students, whatever would have happened. Let's reduce that burden on the school institutions and administration. And sometimes we need to be careful too, because you know that universities were the ones on strike, polytechnics were not on strike. Technical colleges were not on strike. Monotechnics were not on strike, which means that there are certain percentage of people from those places, because we seem to focus more on universities, but we forget that higher institutions also constitute polytechnics, monotechnics, and the likes.
Yes.
And they were not on strike, which means there's a higher tendency they have actually gotten their PVC around the school area.
Okay.
Hence why I said it is not about shutting down universities, polytechnics, and no. It is about suspending academic activities so that the burden of whatever may transpire as a result of an election that we are not sure of how it will, the trajectory or the tide, will pan out, will be lessened on the school administration. That's what we're saying.
Okay, do remember you can call in 0700 1021 1021. You can also send WhatsApp messages to 0907 224 5018. We are live on YouTube at High Impact 102.1 FM. We're also live on Twitter at High Impact 1021 FM. We are still talking about students, youth participation in the forthcoming 2023 elections and possible disenfranchisement and how to avoid that. And you as a youth, what do you think can hinder you from going to the polls on that specific day, bearing in mind that you have your PVC? So, Mr. Timmy, let's go to another part of our conversation, and it's still on Okay, talking about driving the excitement, yes, you also mentioned driving the excitement of young people in the political participation through the instrumentality of policy advocacy. Policy advocacy. Most of the time when we see people come, youth, they, in that particular period of the time of elections, you see some of them are, we cannot completely rule out instances where there has been ballot box snatching and election malfeasance, and most of them are the ones that are used to carry out these acts. Talking about their participation in the elections, that's a participation, although it's just a violent and illegal way to participate. So the youth themselves being used as an instrument for electoral misconduct. How do we address that issue?
It's a difficult one, like Machiavelli, quoting Machiavelli in his book, The Prince, when he said, there is nothing more difficult to do or more doubtful of success than to initiate a new order of things. For the lukewarm defenders are those who profit by the old order, right? And human nature is profit-driven. So the first question we need to ask is, where is the profiting coming from for those kind of acts? Once you can stem the tide of the profiting, right, from such acts, you discover that such acts will reduce tremendously. So basically, the youths in that sense, who are used because of their energy for things like that, are being made to profit from it. Who are those who are making them profit? Politicians, right? And so you see that if we increasingly right, prosecute politicians that are somewhat associated with such activities, it will drastically reduce.
But it has never happened before, Mr. T.
Yes, that is why I said the lukewarm defenders are those who profit by the old order. It has never happened because there are people who profit by that same order, right? And the politicians are the ones who profit by that order. And so that's where the challenge is. For example, when they arrest people who constitute mayhem at the polling units, they're supposed to trace them through investigation to who sent them and also deal with the person who sent them.
Okay, Mr. Temi, you are also a legal practitioner by way of law. Do we have any in place? Most especially that is directed towards electoral malfeasance.
Oh yes. The Electoral Acts actually states the fact that the punishment, the consequence of practicing election violence. But interestingly, the current Electoral Acts 2022 that was recently passed into law and assented by the president, that brought in the introduction of beavers.
Yes.
Right, that Electoral Act also goes further, and that is where we need to be very careful. And that act talks about the fact that when there is violence, or including overvoting, which is what will happen in Osun State, when there's a violence in a polling unit, right, that particular polling unit can be cancelled. The results of that polling unit can be cancelled by the officer in charge of that unit, because of the violence that was perpetrated in that unit. And so the point there is that violence somehow has been incentivized, because if you perpetuate violence in a unit so that people that should legitimately cast their votes are not able to cast their votes, but so that your people can cast their votes, they cancel the results. So what is the essence of all the efforts of perpetuating violence? Right? So, in other words, that itself has deprofited violence. And that's what we need to be ringing in people's ears. That, look, politicians, there is no point perpetuating violence. Go and campaign. Sell yourself to the people in whatever way possible and see what the outcome of the elections will be for you.
Okay. Now, this section of the Electoral Act you just pointed out, it gave power to the electoral officer on that particular polling unit. So it's on the decision that is taken by the electoral officer that's where we have the possible outcome of this. In a state whereby there was a violent act there, and the electoral officer in his authority considered the violence not to have gotten to an extent to necessitate cancelling those results, it's going to stand.
Well, where the challenge, it will stand for the time being, but where the challenge might be will be in the courts of law. Because if the evidence is the end of arguments, if there's overwhelming evidence that there was violence and that is presented as exhibit in court, that simply means it will override the decision of, look at what happened with the tribunal and in Osun State.
Okay, well, in that election, people will still tell you that the court of the case is going to court of appeal. Yes, it will. And depending on the outcome, it might get to Supreme Court as well.
Between that's a period of between 2 to 3 months or more.
All right, Mr. Timmy, we are due for a break. We are going to come back, but when we come back, I want to pick your thoughts on some of the key, because you made some analysis on the technological policies of about 4 or some of the presidential candidates of the major political parties, whilst our focus might not completely be on the technological policies, because it's a young people thing, but on the plans that you must have seen from these persons that they have for the younger generation and for the young people, because we need to let the young people, but I want to also pick your knowledge from an objective point of view, not a partisan point of view. So if you're still listening to us, it's on record where every word matters. I've been having a conversation with a legal practitioner and a policy expert, Timmy Olagunju. We are due for a break. When we return, our conversation continues. Do stay with us.
Welcome to On Record.
Every word matters.
What I want to do is to take Nigeria from consumption to production.
My name is Mr. Innocent Chuguma. I started by trading on motorcycle scrappers.
They really ask, how much is the Nigerian life worth?
Policing is everybody's business, not the business of the men on uniform alone.
We will establish student loan 4 years course. Must be 4 years course.
When you a pharmacist dispenses a drug to a patient, the name of the drug must be written on the envelope.
On Record is a 45-minute program where we discuss the actions, inactions of government, ministries, departments, and agencies, as well as business and health affairs that shape our worldview.
Join us 9 a.m. every weekday on your urban lifestyle station, High Impact 102.1 FM. On Record.
Every word matters.
Put a touch of class and finesse on your brand by advertising with us at High Impact 1021 FM. For more information, call
0706 393 5694, 0915 958 1881, or 0902 745 3931.
Follow us on our social media platforms at High Impact 1021 FM. Our deals are hotter than the weather itself.
Our deals are hotter than the weather itself.
Nigeria hasn't always justified the faith of its people, but there comes a time when you are pushed to the wall and there's nowhere to go but up.
If we just decide in our hearts that we want to believe in Nigeria and we want to take steps every day to make this country a better place.
This is our dream, and a new Nigeria is that dream that we so much seek and desire.
The destiny of Nigeria is in our hands. We are the country. The country is us.
We are Nigeria.
We are that turning point generation. We are Nigeria. We are the future.
We are the future. We are the dream. We are the nation. We are part of this. Yes, we are so amazing. That's the least we shall be. At the heart of the nation, changing history. How can they say that we are finished? We have just begun when we have nowhere else to run. the land of our dreams. We are the nation, we are part of this. Oh, oh. We are the nation, we are part of this. Whoa, carry the song, carry the sound. The future is here, the future is here. Goodbye yesterday, tomorrow is now for the taking. The future is here, the future is here. I am the future, I am the future, I am the dream. Whoa, I am the nation, I am part of this. Yeah, yeah. Yes, I am so amazing. Oh, that's the least I shall be. The least I shall be. At the heart of the nation, changing history. How can they say that we are finished? We have just begun. When we have nowhere else to run. Nowhere else to run to. Nowhere else to go. Hey. Out of the land of my dreams. Oh, I am the nation. I am part of this. Hey, yeah, yeah. So get out of the way of the land of my dreams. I am the nation, I am part of this. Whoa, carry the song, carry the sound. The future is here, the future is here. Goodbye yesterday, tomorrow is now for the taking. The future is here, the future is here. Raise your hands in the air if you believe the future has come now. The future is here, the future is here. This is our, this is our, this is our country. The future is here, the future is here. The future has come.
The future is not a time zone that is yet to come. The future is everything that we can be but have not yet become. The future is everything that we can do but have not yet done. The future is here, the future is now. So go ahead and deliver the future because you can, because you must. And together we will.
On record.
Every word matters.
Welcome back, and many thanks for joining us on the program. Once again, it's On Record, where every word matters. I'm still having a conversation with the legal practitioner and policy expert, Timi Olagunjudu. Remember that you can call into the program. The question we are posing to you is this: as a young person, what are the possibilities of you not going to the polls come the 25th of February 2023 for the elections? What might hinder you? Would you be in school or would you be at home then? Call us, let us know. You can call 0700 1021 1021. You can equally send WhatsApp messages to 090 0907 224 5018. You can call 0700 1021 1021. You can send WhatsApp messages to 0907 224 5018. We are live on Twitter at High Impact 1021 FM. We're also live on YouTube at High Impact 102.1 FM. Barrister Timi, I beg your pardon, Mr. Timi. Before we went on a break, I said I was going to talk about some of those who are vying for the position of the president and some statements they made about favoring the younger generation in Nigeria, and I needed you to address that from an objective point of view. According to the Punch newspaper, on the 24th of January 2023, the presidential candidate of the All Progressives Congress, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, promised to make Nigeria better for younger generation. He was referring to the young people. Rabiu Kwakwanso of the New Nigerian People's Party in November, while presenting his manifesto in Abuja, Kwakwanso pledged to ensure that all entry examinations into tertiary institutions were free for Nigerians. Those category of people where the young people fall into. Peter Obi also during the campaign in Jalingo, Taraba State, promised to bring a permanent end to the incessant strikes by Academic Staff Union of Universities if elected president. And the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Atiku Abubakar, has promised to provide enough funds for education. Obviously, the young people is a demography that cannot be taken for granted. So, given all these statements, how would you analyze the plan they have for younger generation, and what you think is the ideal plan for the younger person?
So basically, the plan they have is quite an interesting one in their manifesto. Interestingly, they are all men running. You know, if there was a woman, perhaps she would also have a manifesto. But that's on a lighter note.
All right.
But the point there is the fact that when it comes to all that has been written, right, what I see is that there's a lot of gibberish. There's a lot of, you know, projections in the air that are not built on the foundation of research and are not projecting the actual needs of the time. And you see a manifesto is supposed to be a policy document. Most of the, you know, statements there are just visionary and not necessarily policy plans on which machinery or vehicle of governance are we going to achieve. Okay, so you say we want to have this, right? What machinery of governance are you going to use? Is it that you're going to restructure the Ministry of Education to achieve? Is it that the NUC, you know, is it that universities will be able to have access to increased funding to research? These are core concerns that needs to be looked at now. The point also is the fact that when you look at all the manifesto, you realize that there is nothing significantly new about you know, what is said there. For example, you know, Atiku talked about I think Tinubu talked about scholarship for girl child education, you know, in, you know, technology and all that. And then Atiku now went on to say development of policies that will drive, you know, girl child education in technology. So you could see that there's a certain level of similarity in some sense. But the point remains that the biggest manifesto, and I think that manifesto needs to be enforceable, is Chapter 2 of the Constitution, which is the fundamental objectives and directives of state principle. That states, for example, in education, that Nigerians shall have access to free education from primary to tertiary institution.
It's stated.
Yes, Chapter 2 of the Constitution. And the Constitution is the highest law of the land. All other laws are within the ambit, operate and get their breath of life from the Constitution. And so the point remains that Chapter 2 of the Constitution spells out the biggest manifesto. It covers education, it covers economy, it covers, you know, talk about it, social, cultural issues that concerns Nigeria. It covers issues of, you know, reflecting the demography in the political space in terms of representation across the country. But the challenge with Chapter 2 of the Constitution is that it is not justiciable. For those who are listening to us, you know, the point is that by not being justiciable, it simply means that you cannot enforce it in the court of law.
Okay.
And that is where the core challenge is. Provision of infrastructure for the people, inclusive infrastructure, catering to persons with disability. All those things are contained in Chapter 2 of the Constitution. And so, for me, that's the biggest manifesto. But it is not justiciable in the court of law.
Okay. Do remember that you can call in 0700 1021 1021. You can send WhatsApp messages to 0907 224 5018. What are those things that might hinder you from going to the polls in 2023 elections? Barrister Timmy, when we talk about all this, the politicians putting out their manifestos, Do you think the average Nigerian youth out there is motivated to vote based on the clarity they got from the manifestos of the politicians, or they are just moved by emotions, by sentiments, or any other thing?
Well, in this election, I feel that there are two sets of Nigerians. The Nigerians that vote on primordial sentiments, and the Nigerians that vote on civic public. You know, and I would explain that briefly. Hopefully we can have our callers call in and, you know, also share their views in this sense. Now, AK in his book, The Two Publics, wrote about two key publics in Nigeria's public life, and even generally, globally, the civic public and the primordial public. He said that on the scale of preference, right, opportunity cost, a society where civic public is outdoes or outperforms primordial publics, that society is on the path towards development.
Okay, so what's civic public and what primordial
yes,
public?
is on the path to development.
Okay.
Now, a society where primordial public outweighs civic public, then they are on the path to destruction under development.
Okay.
He now brought it to Nigeria. Primordial public are sentiments like, what can I get from it? What is the religion? Religion. Primordial publics are ethnicity. Hence why somebody steals money, returns to his village, and his community people are saying, don't prosecute him, he's our son. We've had cases like that, without mentioning name, in Nigeria, where someone steals public good, taxpayer sweat and money, and then the person comes back to his community and is celebrated. Even currently, politicians would even be going to go and prostrate for that person. I mean, senators will be going to. It's weird. Now, you can see that's primordial public. Now, civic public is that which concerns the national life. How can we drive common humanity for progress?
Okay.
So it doesn't look at what ethnicity, what religion. It looks more at capacity, and it looks more at progress. You know, common. And the problem also is that, what is the Nigerian identity? We have a lot of reasons to drive a Nigerian identity, but there is no effort on the policy side to drive the Nigerian identity above the primordial identity. Hence why you go somewhere, they say fill in, after you fill your name, your date of birth, they will start ask you, fill in your state of origin, fill in your state of residence, right? All those things, your religion, right? All those things are basically accentuating or giving more power to primordial publics as against the civic public, which is, I am Nigerian first.
Okay, but Mr. Timmy, there's this argument that the Nigerian youth themselves have not demonstrated the capacity that presents them, that are people who make decisions, most especially political decisions, based on the civic public perspective of things. They make it based on other primordial, because they consider probably the election to them maybe it's not too important.
Well, the point there is this. If people accuse young people in that sense,
yes,
they are wrong. Why? You cannot have a lion give birth to a goat. Right? In other words,
let me point out this. As elections are drawing near, currently there is, I don't want to mention names, there is a reality television program currently on air that has the heart of lots of Nigerian youths. That's one distraction that possibly might be at the corner. There are other distractions that might be at the corner on that very day of the elections. You are aware that when you go to some areas in Lagos or any other part of the country, you see youths gather on the open road because there is no movement that day and they're playing football. Those are a set of Nigerian youth. So whilst if we say that there is a part of the Nigerian public that will take actions that will prevent them from going to the polls that day, they are equally taking actions for themselves, by themselves, to disenfranchise themselves. How do we put a stop to that?
The point is the fact that, like I said, a lion will not give back to a goat.
Okay.
The point is this: every society must make efforts towards developing a civic public. And it's simple. Does Nigeria have a fellowship or internship program where young people in different communities go to the state governments or go to the House of Assembly, for example, or even Aso Rock, for example, or even National Assembly, for example, and understudy for 3 months what governance is about and how it impacts on them? These are what you find in advanced climes. You have governorship fellowship, where people from the states, right, that have shown a little effort at community service are brought for a 3 months, a 6 weeks program to understudy governance, right? We do not have those kind of things. The only place where we might have it is in Kaduna State. And I must say it that in 2015, I sent an email to Governor El Rufai saying this kind of thing. An email. I've not met him. I just sent an email and he acknowledged the email. And years down the line, I saw that they started up a fellowship in Kaduna State called the Ibrahim Kashim also fellowship. And through that, they've been able to raise a lot of young people across the country who are now serving in Kaduna State's governance structure. But the point is that that's just a state. Imagine replicating those kind of things across states where young people you start preparing them with a consciousness. What you promote is what becomes popular. You don't expect children, teenagers to just grow up into civic consciousness. I must commend the Nigerian youths. At the level of consciousness that we are driving at the moment, let's forget about the past. Currently now, even INEC statistics shows it, that more young people have registered significantly to vote in the elections, right? And so the current trend is that young people are increasingly voting. But the challenge that we've had is the fact that we've not created an environment that promotes civic public. And so what you promote is what becomes popular.
Lastly, Mr. Timmy, how with what we're currently facing, fuel scarcity with the Naira redesign, and there are other issues that we're currently facing at the moment, power failure, there's no consistent electricity and power, and do we see these particular things affecting the smooth running of the election come the 25th of February? And any chances of this disenfranchising people because you have the beavers and some of the machines that might function, or because there's no power somewhere, they needed to put on power, to put on the gen to power the machines in some polling units and other places. These are issues that has not been considered, probably put on the table in a serious level of conversation with regards to 2023 election.
Well, the point is the fact that I do not even see fuel affecting the election. That's one point.
Logistics moving?
Yes. And the simple truth is that even on the election day, how much movement can people do? The roads are usually barricaded. You understand? Usually, I know that it's press, election observers, and if you that are allowed to move around.
INEC officials.
Conveying
materials.
You know. So, in citizens who have no business in the administration of election, who are voters, cannot necessarily, take their car and say they want to move from, wherever Ikeja to Oshodi on the day of elections.
Specifically, I was referring to INEC officials conveying those voting materials.
Well, I'm sure that INEC is good. We are bringing this conversation. Conversation enriches the understanding, and I'm sure that INEC, to a large extent, listening to conversations like that, if they've not given it a thought, will start to give such issues a thought. I think that is the least of their concern. The biggest issues now will be as to the integrity of INEC officials, but that's a conversation for another day.
Okay. Thank you so much. Timmy Olagunju is a legal practitioner and a policy expert. This morning, we've had a robust conversation on youth participation in elections and the possibility of being disenfranchised and how we can avoid that possibility. I am Onye Priye once again until I come your way tomorrow. On the Record continues to stay with us.
On Record.
Every word matters.
Welcome to On Record.
Every word matters.
What I want to do is to take Nigeria from consumption to production.
My name is Mr. Innocent Chugoma. I started by trading on motorcycle spare parts.
They really ask, how much is the Nigerian life worth?
Policing is everybody's business, not the business of the men on uniform alone.
We will establish student loan 4 years course. Must be 4 years course.
When you dispense, a pharmacist dispenses a drug to a patient, the name of the drug must be written on the envelope.
On Record is a 45-minute program where we discuss the actions, inactions of government, ministries, departments, and agencies, as well as business and health affairs that shape our worldview.
Join us 9 a.m. every weekday on your urban lifestyle station, High Impact 102.1 FM. On Record.
Every